Okay, hello everybody. Yeah. So we have this activity. Let's try to see. They say valid parenthesis. So in this activity, I basically it's an activity I've done before. Okay. So your target is to check if the parentheses are closing. So like this one is opening and closing here, and this one is opening and closing inside here. So if it's opening and closing, then it is true. It is a valid parenthesis. But if it is not opening and closing, like in this one, it is closing, then opening, then closing, then this one is not correct. Basically, that's what I'm saying. So it will return false. Now I said all inputs will be string consisting of only characters of this blah blah blah. So I'm going to first try to do it in JavaScript, then we'll now try to do it later in another. So I'm just going to declare a variable. Let's just say parenthesis count. So say parent count. Okay, so for now it is 0. Okay, that means for the parentheses that we have 0 parentheses for now. Now we are going to loop through the length of this array. So say for let I be equal to 0 and I is less than parenthesis this guy. Okay, so basically this is just logic. We are just working through the logic. So we are going through the length of the entire string. So we want to go through the length of the entire string, and the purpose of doing that is for us to check if it is opening or closing. Okay, so if it is opening, we are going to add 1 to the parentheses. If it is closing, we are going to subtract 1. So if our answer at the end of the day is not equal to 0, then that means the parentheses, that means it should return false. That means something happened somewhere, because for every opening bracket there must be a closing bracket. Okay, so that's what we want to do. um yeah, so the beauty of this thing is to get how you think. Now if you can solve problems like this, you can solve complex problems that have to do with software, because generally what you do is what is the idea behind what you're doing. And again, it's not just getting the to the answer, is using the most efficient route. Efficient means that it shouldn't consume a lot of space, it shouldn't consume a lot of time, and the rest of them. So I said the parentheses count, right? So we are going to say if um if the parentheses if the parentheses at a particular index, so let me use control V here. If the particular parentheses at a particular index is equal to um an opening string like this, an opening bracket like this. Okay, so we're checking if that parenthesis is an opening bracket, then we want to add 1 to parenthesis. So we'll say parenthesis parent count plus, oh sorry, plus plus. Now if it is not, obviously you're going to say else. um Now I don't want to make a mistake, so I want to be very sure that there are no spaces. So I'll say the parenthesis now should be equals to, let me replace every space, because of course if I get to a particular place that the thing is a space, I don't know what type of data they are giving us, but I want to replace every space with no space. So I'm going to use what's this called now for its regular expression. So I'll just replace it with no space like this. Okay, so that will be our new parenthesis count. So our parenthesis string now will be the string that has no spaces. Now that we know that, we can go ahead and say that if it is not this opening bracket, then subtract, because we are sure it's a closing bracket. It cannot be a space now, since we have already removed all spaces. Okay, this is just to check if in case it is not this opening bracket and it is a space, it is going to subtract. So I don't want it to subtract for spaces, so I removed all these spaces. Now we are going to say if at the end of the day n is less than 0, if n is less than 0, that means there are more closing brackets than there are opening brackets. They want it to return false. At the end of the day, if there are more open brackets, probably the number became positive. We're just going to say return, whatever we want to check here should just be return n is equal to 0. N is equal to 0 means that if it's not 0, then return false. Okay, so now this here is very important because this will also return for less than 0. But why this is important is that it might get to a particular point that it gets less than 0, then comes back to 0. So it will come back and return true. But if for any chance it gets less than 0, that means there is an opening bracket that came first before, there's a closing bracket that came first before an opening bracket. That's what I mean, because if all the closing brackets have happened, it gets back to 0. And for anything, if a closing bracket comes before an opening bracket, it will go into the negative side because it's going to subtract. So it will be 0 minus 1, then it will become minus 1. So it now becomes less than 0. And if for any chance, even if the closing bracket gets an opening bracket to cancel it off and makes 0, for the fact that the closing bracket came first, spoils everything. So that negative value is why we are checking inside the loop first. Okay, so that's the idea here. Okay, so um okay, so there is a reference error. N is not defined. I think I thought I defined. Okay, oh, so I'm using parent count here. Sorry, let me just copy it and then replace every n that we have. I didn't think of it. So we have parent count less than 0, parent count less is equals to 0. So let's test it this time. Hopefully it should work. Okay, so this is it. Then we can attempt it. Okay, I think I've done this before. So let me try it in another language, probably Python, for my Python friends.